Hallo ihr Rabauken and welcome to this Capture One Pro Quicktorial. In this video we will take a look at the exposure tool, which can be found in the exposure tool tab. If you can't find it, simply right click in this open space, go to add tool, find the exposure tool, and then it will be added to this panel. So the first thing we will do is we will take a look at this menu to find out if there are any features that are not being displayed in the exposure tool panel directly. So the ones we can find over here are these defaults you can store and save. So in this case it's for PSD files, since I've chosen a PSD file. If I go to a RAW file, you will see that now you can save defaults for the camera the RAW image was shot with. To show you the different functionalities, I created this gradient image. So the diagonal line is showing the brightest values, so every dot is around 255, and then I'm starting at very low values around 10 over here, increasing and then decreasing again to small values of 10. So the exposure slider is the equivalent to exposure in your camera, so changes to ISO, f-stop and shutter speed are reflected to different exposures, which is also reflected by the slider. So this means increasing or decreasing the slider value will affect the whole image, which you can see also over here in the histogram. So the dark tones are over here. There are a lot of dark tones since most of the image is black, and the bright tones are over here. Mid-tones are in the middle. So if I'm increasing or decreasing the exposure, everything is moving, so the dark tones and the bright tones, as you can see. And it's also affecting the whole image, which you can see over here. So the diagonal line is maximum already, so nothing is happening there. There's also some auto adjustment. So this button over here is the auto adjustment for exposure. So if you click it, Capture One Pro is trying to calculate or to guesstimate the best exposure of your image. It's better being shown using a live image. So if I'm using auto adjust over here, this is basically what Capture One is trying to guesstimate concerning the correction of the exposure. Sometimes it works pretty well, sometimes it doesn't. I really like to use levels most of the time. So the next slider is contrast, and contrast increase and decrease changes the distance of the bright and the dark tones. So this would mean that this part would move opposite of this part. So if I'm increasing the contrast, we are separating the dark tones from the bright tones. Over here you can see that these areas are getting darker and the middle areas are getting brighter. If I'm decreasing the contrast, we are pushing the dark and the bright tones closer together, which means that this area is getting darker and this getting a little bit brighter. And it's evening out the contrast. Maximum contrast, minimum contrast. The brightness slider is attacking the midtones. The midtones are basically the tones that are luminescent-wise in the middle between dark and bright. So this would be approximately this area. In this image over here, the midtones are represented by these areas. So this area, this grayer area, and this grayish area compared to the black and the white area. So if I'm now increasing the brightness, as you can see, most of the stuff is happening over here. If I'm decreasing the brightness, also the most stuff is happening over here. The center is nearly not being affected. And what you can see in the histogram is like the most action is happening in this area. So now we will take a look at a live image. So using the exposure, you will see everything is affected. So everything is getting pretty bright or everything is getting pretty dark. Then concerning contrast, what you would expect is that the distance of bright and dark between the brighter area over here, for example, is getting larger. So this means this area should get brighter, this area should get darker if I'm increasing the contrast, which is happening right now. And if I'm decreasing the contrast, they are nearly level. The distance between bright and dark is pretty low, so it nearly looks like it has got the same luminescence over there. Then brightness would mean that, for example, the shirt and this area over here should be affected first. So if I'm increasing brightness, as you can see, there are a lot of things happening in the shirt. And there's not so much happening on the mask and the darker parts. Same the other way around. So if you compare the -50 brightness to a -50 exposure, there's a big difference. So over here the face is gone, and -50 brightness you can still see the face. So now you might ask yourself why saturation is part of the exposure tool tab, but it makes sense, which I will show you using this color image. So saturation is affected by the brightness of an image. If you decrease brightness and the image is getting darker, it will look more saturated. The other way around, it will look more desaturated if you are increasing the brightness. So to show you, I will use the compare tool and I will increase the contrast a little bit and decrease the brightness. So as you can see, this is the after image. It's looking much more saturated. So I have to desaturate this part a little bit to make it the same look and feel as the other image. If we now move the other way around, so I will decrease the contrast and increase the brightness, this image is looking much more washed out compared to this one. So I can increase the saturation a bit to make it look the same. So there's one important thing about saturation which Capture One Pro always stresses, and this is that this is intelligent saturation. And for values above 0, the saturation works as what's known from other software programs as vibrance. Vibrance protects skin tones, so it works differently on colors that are part of skin tones than other colors in an image. And if you decrease the saturation to values below 0, then the saturation in Capture One Pro is working as standard saturation, which means that if you get to 0, you really are getting a black and white image. Okay, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you liked it. I'm happy to receive a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and always remember to listen to more heavy metal.